All right, we got a hold of an early access game key before the first version of this game is even released for the public, and it's called Undefined. So I'm going to check out this game, see what it's about, and give you all the early intel. Let's first start with what this game is generally about. It's an open sandbox builder-crafter that uses the Unreal Engine and voxel-based construction. As I said in the intro, this is the first release of this early access game, so we both, speaking about you as the viewers and myself, need to be a little gentle about the overall game evaluation, because it looks like there's a lot more development to come than there actually is currently being presented. But there are some special sauce features this game has that could really distinguish it from most other builder games, but I'll get to that in a second. I think it's a good idea to take a look at the roadmap for development, and I really like it when developers post this kind of information for an early access game. We get to see what's currently being released, what's being worked, and intended for game features that are planned. So it gives you a nice broad spectrum of expectations. It looks like there's a lot of forthcoming things in electronics, farming, vehicles, weapons and enemies, which I assume probably go together, and is all pretty promising. I mean, who doesn't like a little adversarial enemy action along with their farming? What we're going to focus on currently, though, is what we're actually getting in this initial early access release. They do have an enormous planet gen at 1/10 of Earth, a full set of biomes, and a few other tidbits. And what really seems to be this game's core feature, which is the ability to create highly customizable building blocks, virtually in any shape or form that you could want. Now, there are other games that do provide the user a huge assortment of building block types and shapes that they can assemble to create some really impressive structures, buildings, vehicles, and whatever, but what this game seems to be providing is the ability to create your own unique fundamental building blocks that you can then assemble into other types of structures and vehicles.
Not bad.
So we're going to check that out. There's a couple bits about the game logistics itself probably worth noting. The game did install in a custom location without a hitch, and what could throw some people off is the actual name of the game itself. When I looked in my Steam library, the game name that was set in curly brackets of Undefined almost looked like some sort of error file or something else suspect that wasn't supposed to be there. It might be a little inside secondary joke from the developers, but I think the overall name is because it's such an open sandbox with this customizable and completely open, undefined design ability. You are just dumped into the game. No tutorial, and very little in the way of on-screen hints about what to do. I strongly recommend to anyone jumping into this game to go check out their YouTube short series of about 5 videos that covers the very basic functions and capabilities. It was enormously helpful for me. And if I were to provide any critique, it's that even in those videos, some important actions and key controls were missing from those beginning tutorials. I have no doubt that they will expand and improve. But as of right now, there are a couple important things missing. And this game does rely heavily on keyboard combinations of shift this and alt that to really utilize the custom design and building aspects. So after getting dumped into the game, I only knew of a couple things I needed to do. I had to gather some sticks from small shrubs and get some food from berries and pick up a few stones to be able to craft my first set of primitive tools, which is where I immediately ran into trouble. Stones are supposed to be lying around on the ground, but try as I might, I couldn't seem to find one. I kind of thought stones might be just laying about everywhere, but maybe not. After hunting around the edges of the woods for a while, I thought I'll just go for that mountain over there. Mountains are made of rocks, so there's bound to be a bunch of stones, at least leading up to the peak. And besides, I probably would be able to see a biome or two along the way to the snowy peaks of that mountain. So I started running. And I ran. And I ran. And I ran right into the night across what seemed to be an endless savanna. I could tell I was getting a little closer to the mountain, but it was then I started to get a sense of exactly how big this generated world actually is. This is planned for multiplayer, and with a very basic IP address identification currently in the game, you can start up a server and invite your friends, and maybe even host this game on one of the many cloud-hosted servers out there, and have open access to a lot of players. On that latter part, I don't know for sure, but I'm just speculating, because you can join the game if you know the IP address. And that's how a lot of people currently join Eco Dad Speed server that I'm sure a lot of you have heard me talk about. But in the end, I just wondered if the world needed to be this big. But maybe so. I kept running and eventually found another forest and continued on into the night. I pondered whether or not the world really needed to be this big again, but with the intended introduction of not only ground vehicles, but flying vehicles and spaceships that can go to other moons and planets, maybe in the grand scheme of things, this size of a world was perfectly fine. It's just me and my little feet right now that are having to travel for about an hour and not even reach this mountain. And I still hadn't found any stones. Maybe I didn't even know what I was looking for. And the tutorial did say that if you just dug into the dirt, you would unearth some stones. So I did that. I just started randomly digging in the woods to see what I could find. And I was pretty pleased. Not only did I find a couple stones, but some other kinds of rocks, iron, copper, sand. And this was all pretty good. At least it let me know that there was a wide array of minerals and things to find in the ground. And I'll admit that with these kinds of games, I do seem to find myself boring into the ground like a mole man, always creating mines and tunnels. Eventually, I came to the other side of this new forest, which is where I decided I had traveled far enough to get to this mountain, and it was time to really settle down, try to get some base building going. I started digging another pit for materials, used a couple of the stones I had found so far to make a stone pickaxe and regular axe, and gathered some raw materials. Without a tutorial, I was just following my basic intuition of feeling like I needed to make this workbench to open up more crafting. So at the workbench, indeed, there were some more things I could create, including a furnace and forge. But I did want to start to create a little bit of a workshop here. So it was time to start investing in the main part of this current game, and that was the building block design aspect. It took a little fiddling around, but what I discovered is that you can start out with just a really basic shape, like a cube, and what I thought were just data readouts in the top right corner were actually numbers you can change to manipulate the shape. I could change the thickness and size of a cube in any way that suited me. And I could also see that the amount of required material to make a shape changed depending on the form it took. Just thinking very simply at first, all I wanted was a kind of flooring so it would be able to properly set my workbench on in any other crafting tables so they weren't just sitting on the ground. Now, once I had created this thin, flat, basic shape from a cube, I could save the name of this shape and use it later for crafting. But I was also only scratching the surface of this capability. I laid down the flooring and then, from those tutorials, learned that you could change the angular increments for any object. I could rotate an object in any direction and set the degrees of angle as precisely as I wanted to place it any way I wanted. So slopes, angles, as well as sizes could be adjusted in any way that I wanted. For now, I just wanted a simple ramp for my platform. That would do. But I wanted to investigate this design aspect a little farther, because like I said, you can create unique shapes that are not even available and make them as mutations of the initial building blocks. So again, not thinking too extravagant, I was able to combine a very thin wall plate I created with a kind of half hemisphere and put them together and save this union of shapes into a unique item for me to craft. I wasn't even limited to using stone on stone. I could have used metal or wood with stone, any combination of those things together. I started to see that all these combinations of squares, circles, rectangles, cylinders, and any kind of material that could be shaped any way I wanted allowed me to fully express a creativity in any way that I could possibly imagine. That singular aspect of this game, I think, is its current draw. But there was just a little more I wanted to explore for this video. I made the furnace and forge and was able to take some of the iron I'd found, crafted it into different ingots, bars, and plates, and made myself a nice new set of improved shovels and axes, which did allow me to break down some of the ores that I hadn't been able to touch with just the stone tools. So the game does have that concept of needing to improve things so you can get better things. There was also a pretty cool thing with the forge and furnace operation itself. In most games I've played, once you throw in some sort of fuel, sticks, coal, or whatever, the table runs until the fuel is gone. This had a little extra feature. Each smelting item had a temperature range you needed to reach and craft it inside of this range. And you increased the temperature by adding in more of the fuel. It would boost up and increase the temperature in a kind of smooth arc, reach a peak in temperature, and then start to slowly cool back down as the fuel burned off. I kind of liked it. It felt very hands-on, and I had to monitor that range to make sure it was going to continue to craft. It's like I was actually having to participate in the smelting action, just a little bit. So here's where I ended up about the game, purely based on this first look, and not even investigating all the current capabilities that the game had presented, which outside of this design and build mechanic is relatively limited. If you are a true builder enthusiast and love this idea of being able to just build whatever your creative mind can imagine, then this is a game you might want to check out. If you're a person that thinks the custom designer concept is cool, but would like more gameplay variety than that and different avenues of progression, it's probably just one to keep on your watch list. And keep an eye on that roadmap and the progression of features so you'll know when to jump in. I can't say for sure what the initial price of this game will be on Steam when it comes out, because it's not even been released as of editing this video. It's scheduled to be released August 20th, 2021, the date that I'm actually posting this video. But I'd like to see the price point fairly low, given the amount of game features available and the maturity of the game operation. I didn't run into a lot of bugs, but little things like the lack of a tutorial, no hints, even things like not having the quick action slots numbered across the bottom, just all added up to a game that should probably come out at a bargain price and then slowly ratchet up as more features and tuning get added. I can't say exactly what a fair price would be, but compared against a game that is amazing, like Eco, that also has an extensive builder-crafter component, deep multiplayer economics, a full law and government system, and a generally proven track record at a little under $30, you can make the call. I am, however, giving away a free copy of Undefined to anyone that posts a comment to this video. But I'd be particularly interested in hearing your thoughts about the game design, any other games that may have something similar, or general opinions of Undefined. I'm going to let the comments run for a couple weeks and probably do the drawing toward the end of the month. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll be talking to you later.